first before gluing it in. If you're gluing it in right away, you do need to turn it sideways to glue it in. Alright, so to start off with, we have our big triangle here. So remember we talked about this yesterday. This is our one big triangle, A, B, C. But then we have two smaller triangles. We have A, C, D on this left side and C, B, A. So first thing we're going to do is find a color for each of these letters, each of these segments. So I'm going to use red for B. I'm going to use blue for H. Green for A. I'm going to use yellow for C, going all the way across. I'll use brown for X. And orange for Y. So if you want to use the same colors so that way it's easier to keep track. Otherwise, this is kind of your key for your colors. So you're coloring each of those a separate color. And then keep track of which colors you use for which ones. Alright, so when we look at problems, all of our problems are always going to look like this first one. But to find out our ratios here that we're going to use, our proportions, we're going to just break those triangles apart. Now yesterday when we broke those triangles apart, we just kept them all the same way. See, remember how we kind of just like broke them apart this way? Today we're rotating them so that they look the same. So this small triangle is this one on this left, this triangle is the one on the right, but we just rotated them all so it's a little bit easier to compare the parts that go together. Okay, so again, I'm going to go through and just color code these three. So I have here is little b, so that's going to be red. Good morning guys, here's the blue ones for today. Hand one to Raylan, thank you. Alright, so here's B, so I'm going to use red. This one is the big triangle, so it's going to be my red, green, and then yellow across the bottom. So A. And then C is across the bottom. So that's the big triangle. This is the overall big one. Okay, this one is on the one on the left side. So here again we have B. So I'm going to highlight that B in that red, but this time it's on the bottom. And then it goes with X, which I have as brown. And then H, which I have as blue. Okay, so this is the one on the left side. And then this is the one on the right side. So again, I have an H, which I have as blue. I have A, which I did as green. And Y, which I did was orange. So lots of colors today, just kind of helping us see the parts that are the same. So we took this three triangles, the big triangle, the two small ones, and we're breaking them up into 1, 2, 3 triangles. Alright, so as we take a look at this, we have three proportions that we're going to use to help us find missing measurements in this right triangle to start off with. And the reason why we have this is because sometimes with these right triangles, especially if we don't know any of the degrees, or if we know certain parts but not the whole part, I don't know. It's nice to use, especially to find that altitude. All right, so to start off with, if I have x over h, so I have x is my brown, over h, which is my blue. So first thing I want to do is find out which triangle are we talking about that has both x and h. The big one, the smallest one, or the medium one? Which one has both x, h? Yeah, the small one has x, h. But now I want to start with h again. So as I compare this middle one, it's kind of the small one, which other triangle am I going to compare that to that has that h? Yeah, this one on the right. They both have that h. So h and x, as I go here, they're both on the left side. So it goes x over h. So now over here, I'm going to do h over what matches with this h and this triangle. This side, DC, would match with DB. They're going to match with this side. So these two, this x and h, go together. But then this h goes with that y. So it's going to be x over h equals h over y. Okay, if you're not color coding, this is a really important part to make sure you get that y there. Sometimes people who aren't color coding are zoning out. That y is a super important part. Okay, these three will be important players. Okay, our next one we have is C compared to B. So if I look at C, that's my yellow. I'm comparing it to B, my red. So first thing I want to do is find the triangle that has both C and B in it. So that's this first triangle. I have C and B. I want to compare it to another triangle where B is involved. So where is B also involved? First, second, or third? Second. But here B and C match up. That's why they're together here, B and C. So on the bottom, what matches my B? Which letter matches my B in this triangle? X. So it's going to be B over X. Is my brown. Okay, and then we have one more ratio that we're going to use quite frequently. We could come up with a lot more ratios, but just these three will be good enough. So we have C, and this time we're going to compare it to A. A is my green. Here you go, Tina. Here's the top. All right, so I'm looking for a triangle that has both C and A involved. That's my big triangle, C and A. And then my other one with an A is this triangle on the left side. Or sorry, on the right side. Left and rights lately have been really mixed up. Okay. So here C and A go together, C and A. On the bottom, I now want this A on the left side. So this C goes with this A on the right, but the left A goes with what letter in this right side? C and A go together, so A and H or A and Y? Yeah, A and Y. Good. All right, so now that we have these proportions, this kind of part, this 10-minute part of our lesson was really just setting these up. Now that they're set up, we're going to just kind of look at what we're given in this main triangle and see which parts we need. We don't really need to access these three parts anymore. It's helpful sometimes to see that visual of what's actually lining up. C goes with B, C goes with A, B goes with X, but B also goes with H. A goes with H, but A also goes with Y. Kind of looking across and seeing how these ratios are set up is important. But as we solve it, we're going to actually look back and just kind of label our parts based on this, and then figure out which ratio we need to use. So as we take a look, we have H. We don't know what H is. I'm going to continue to color code. You guys are going to think it's excessive today, but that's okay. Okay, so my H is blue. They give me B, so B is my red. And then I have this 5 and 20. So big part here when we identify 5 and 20 is we want to know which one is X and which one is Y. Since I already have B, when I look at 5, 5 and B come from the same triangle. So do I want 5 and B, do I want that 5 to be X or Y? Yeah, I want it to be X, because in our triangle up here, B and X go together. So 5 is my X. So I'm going to write a little X next to it. Which means 20 is the what would that whole length be? It's X and Y. So when you get these problems, the first step that you need to do is identify which letters you're given, which variables, which parts of that original triangle you're given. And then use those parts to find the missing measurements. So in this first one, we're going to find H. So as I take a look up at the top here, there's 3 proportions we have. Which proportion am I going to use to find H? The only one with H involved, right? This X over H equals H over Y. So I'm going to just start by rewriting that really quick. That's when we're using X over H equals H over Y. And then I'm going to fill in those parts. So what is my X? What number? 5. So 5 over, do we know our H? Nope, that's what we're trying to find. So 5 over H equals, we have H again over, and now it's over Y, 20. All right, so now we need to solve this for H. Now, what we've been solving for in proportions, usually we only have one part that we're missing, and we can just multiply. This time we have an H on both sides. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to multiply by H first to get rid of that H. So multiply by H. If we do it on one side, we have to do it on the other. On this side, I'm going to write it a little bit off to the side, rather than writing it right underneath. That was a really crooked line. Okay. So over here, these H's undo each other. We're left with 5 equals. Over here, if I have H times H, what's another way to write H times H? H to the power of 2, yeah, over 20. So that part's new to us when we solve. Okay, now my next goal is to get H all alone. So to undo this dividing by 20, we're going to multiply by 20. Five times 20 is 100. If you didn't know that, that's okay. You can use a calculator. The 20s are gone here, so we still have H squared. I ran out of space here, but that's okay. I'll just go a little off to the side. And I need to get H by itself. I'm not there yet. So how do I get rid of a squared? What's the opposite of taking something to the power of 2? Square root. Good. So we square root both sides. So So what is the square root of 100? 10. So 10 equals h. I ran out of space. If you still have space below, I forgot how small we have to write on this one. Yikes. All right, now our next one we're still using the same example. We're going to find b. So as I look back up at the ratios, we have 3 proportions. We need to decide which proportion we're going to use to find b. So I'm going to zoom out here. Which one of these 3 would I use to find b? The first, the middle, or the last? Yeah, the middle is the only one with b in it, right? So that's what we're going to use. So it's c over b equals b over x. So if you want to write that very small, you can. C over b equals b over x. So that's the ratio or the proportion we're going to use to solve this. But now we need to fill in the parts we know. So C, if I look back at my thing, back at my triangle, not thing, I don't know why I said thing. C, we didn't label any part C, so let's look back. C is the whole length of x and y. So as I look at C, that's this part here, going all the way across. How could I find that length that's going all the way across? Yeah, add them together. What's 20 plus 5? 25. So C is 25. Okay, so as we look at that one, C is 25, so I'm going to zoom in again. So we're going to put 25 over, do we know B? Nope, that's what we're trying to find. So 25 over B equals, again we have another B over, and then what's our X? X is 5, good. And then we're solving that equation. All right, so to find B here, our goal first is we need B's on one side. I don't like B on the bottom. I could flip it, but if I flip it, this side would also flip and B would be on the bottom. So I'm going to undo this dividing by B. So we're going to multiply by B. I personally like to, instead of writing times B on the bottom here, I like to write it off to the side to remember it's going to actually go on the top. So we get 25 equals B times B would be B squared over 5. Okay, to get B by itself, that squared is like its best friend. We're going to keep that squared with it as long as we can. So we'll get rid of that dividing by 5 first. So to undo a divide by 5, multiply by 5. And that just gives us that B squared. And then we're going to throw that into our calculator. 25 times 5. We get 125. It's not quite our answer yet. We have to get B all alone. So I still have to get rid of that squared. So how would I undo a squared? Square root. Okay. So square root, if we square root one side, we have to square root the other side. So B equals, now this part you're going to want to use a calculator for. 125 does not have a perfect square. So it is going to be an irrational number. It's going to keep going on forever and ever and always. It will never stop, never end, never repeat. So we do need to round it. Today we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So hundredth is 2 decimal places. So if I have 11.18 hundredths, do I want to keep it at 18 hundredths or round to 19 hundredths? Good. What number tells me to keep it at 18? Yeah, the next number. Good. So the next number is a 0. That tells me to stay. So 11.18. All right, you guys are doing so good. I know this is, I don't know. I don't like this lesson. I'll say that again. I don't like it. But it's the last terrible lesson, and then we get to do, I don't know. I like the rest of the lessons. This chapter is really fun. You probably won't think so, but just pretend. Yay. Okay, here we go on the next one. First thing I'm going to do is color code the parts. So as I look, I have 60 goes through the middle. So that's my altitude. What letter represents the one going through the middle? H. Good. So that's my blue personally, if you want to color code with me. Okay, obviously I have my A here. It says A, so I'm going to keep that green. Lost my green for a second. There we go. Okay, I have this 25. Is this 25 going to be the X or the Y? It's along that C, so I know it's X and Y are along the C. Is 25 the X or the Y? Is it going to be across from the B or across from the A? Across from the A would be this guy here, so that one we don't know. That would be our Y. So as we look back up here, A and Y are across from each other. So since that A isn't across from the 25, that means 25 has to be the X. Okay, so 25 is our X. And then we do have our C labeled here. All right, our goals today are to find C and A on this one. So this one we're going to have to think a little bit different. It's going to be a little the same, little different, little everything. Okay, so as we take a look at C, first goal is to find C. If I take a look at my C's, my proportions with C involved, I have C over B equals B over X. So I would do C over, where's my B? B would be up here. Do we know our B? Nope. I can't have two unknowns, so I can't put C and B together because I don't know either of them. So that one won't work. Can't do that. What about this one? Can I do C over A equals A over Y? Do I know A? No, we don't. Do we know Y? No, we don't even know Y. So we can't do either of these two. So the only thing left that I can do is this last one, this first one. X over H equals H over Y. So X over H equals H over Y. And now you're probably looking at this being like, we were going to find C. There's no C here. You're right. But to find C, we actually have to find another part first. And this is the only one that we can do where we have numbers in and we're only missing one part. So as we take a look and we fill in the numbers, what is our X? 25. So 25 over, what's our H? 60 equals, and then our H again, 60 over, we don't know our Y. All right, this time it's a little bit easier of a proportion. We only have one missing part. We're just missing Y. Do I want the Y on the bottom, though? Nope. So I'm going to flip it. Remember how we did this last chapter? We put y over 60. If I flip one side, we have to flip the other side, 60 over 25. And then we just have to undo a dividing by 60. So how do we undo a divide by 60? Multiply by 60. Okay, we throw that into our calculator. 60 divided by 25 times 60 is 144. So let's find where y is on our diagram and label that as 144. So if you need to look back at the picture, the original picture, way up in the corner, we're looking for y. Give me 1 second. So we're looking for y, so finding out where y is here. Y and x are along that bottom edge with c. Okay, so as I take a look at our bottom edge here with the x and the c, I have x is 25, so this other part here is 144. So that's our y. So now that I have my x and my y, can I find the c, the whole length? Yeah, it's actually quite easy. Well, how am I going to find the whole length now that I know the two parts? Add them together. So 25 plus 144. Math. 25 plus 144 is 169. So C is 169. So in order to find C, we actually had to find Y first. You're good, Dora. Alright, so that one was kind of an in-between. But also to remind you that when we solve some proportions, sometimes we're only missing one part. We don't always have to do that squared and square root. Okay, last one, find A. So as I take a look up at the top, what is the proportion that I'm going to use to find A? This last one, which is C over A equals A over Y. Okay, that's the only one with A in it. So that's the one I have to use. And then we're going to use our diagram here to fill in the parts that we know. So what is our C? We just found that out. C is 169 over, we're trying to find A, that's our goal, so we don't know our A. So we're going to leave that as A equals A again, so these match, we don't have the numbers, so they're just both A's. And then it's over Y, and luckily to find C, we also had to find Y, so what is our Y? 144, yep. Alright, so to solve this, again, this time we have A's. There's one on bottom and one on top, so even if I flip it, there's still going to be one on bottom, one on top. It won't change. Here, when there's only one Y, we could flip it so that Y was on top. It didn't change because there was only one Y. Here, with the A's on opposite corners, or opposite parts of the fraction, I have to undo this dividing by A. So to undo dividing by A, we're going to multiply by A. I like to write it off to the side here. That helps me visualize it. This times A over here. So the A's are gone. We're left with 169 equals. Now I have A times A. A times A isn't 2A, it's A to the power of 2. So we're multiplying A by itself. So A squared over 144. Okay, to undo a dividing by dividing by 144, we're going to multiply by 144. Gonna run out of space again. Love that. Okay, so 169 times 144, we're going to get a pretty big number. We get 24,336. Okay, but that's not quite our answer yet. We still have to get rid of the squared. So how would I undo the squared? That's the part where we square roots. And I'm running out of space, so I'll write it off to the side here. So A equals, in my calculator here, I'm going to do square root 24336. And our answer is actually a whole number, 156. Alright, if you're using your phone calculator, which you should not be doing during school because you cannot use your phones during school. So when you're working on the homework tomorrow, if you have a Android, it's a little different. iPhones, you have to actually hit this button down here and hit scientific. If you're doing a square root, you actually type in the number first. So we're going to type in 24336. Okay, we have that number in. Then we hit the square root button up here with the 2 square roots. And then equals, and it will give us our 156. Okay, but you shouldn't be using your phones in class because we have no phone February, so that should be a moot point. All right.